Hey, it's Des back with another video. Obviously, I've been like gone for like 7 days. I haven't released a video in quite a bit, but I was kind of ill. But now I'm back. So first thing, talk about the United game. 3-1, we lost. Oh well. So for me, the main things that came out of the game that I think we can take going forward, some of the main issues, was the number one thing was the defensive mid position. Obviously Lokonga played that position, but obviously we know our first choice is Partey. When we look at his availability and what he's done, what he's been able to give us in the 3 seasons he's been here. The first season he played 24 games. Second season he played 24 games. Third season he's already injured again. So he's missed 14 games the first season, 14 games the second season, and then you know what I mean. So like for me, that's a position of priority now because we know we can't rely on him to remain fit for the season. And in terms of the Congo, for me, I like what he offers on the ball. He's a good player. He can progress the ball with passing, with dribbling. He can receive under pressure. He can receive and turn. Yeah, he's able to like carry the ball past players as well. He's a very good player on the ball. He can play six and he can play eight. But for me, in order for him to play as a six, he still needs to develop the defensive part of his game because he's intense when he's on the ball in terms of spreading the ball, playing the passes around and things like that. But off the ball, he doesn't have that same intensity. So he needs to improve both his defensive qualities in terms of being able to read the game, understanding when players are making runs in behind him, being able to anticipate runs, knowing where to position himself on the pitch off the ball. And then, but if he wants to play as an eight, he needs to improve his creativity because at the moment he plays passes to progress the ball, but he's not really playing those line breaking passes to create chances. So for me, that's where the development is. We need to find out if he's going to become an eight or a six. But whilst we're waiting for that to happen, he can't be our first choice or the player where we have to always go to him because our first choice defensive mid is always injured. So for since Partey is going to be injured, now that becomes a position of priority. We need to sign a defensive mid who's going to be first choice in that place, whilst we find out where Lakonga is going to play long term. So for me, that's the first thing that came out of the United game for me. The second thing is why we conceded all those goals. For me, there's a lot of individual mistakes that happen. I can break down the first goal with just a lot of individual mistakes there. But for me, it wasn't a problem of individuals. It was a problem of the pressing overall. Because you could say maybe Odegaard should have taken the player that Lokonga was pressing, which was Ericsson. Maybe he should have taken over him and let Lokonga go back to position. You could say maybe Lokonga should have been more aggressive with his press. He should have been tighter on Ericsson. You could also say maybe Martinelli should have been tighter because he was on the left side. He should have closed the gap that Lokonga left. You could also say Gabriel didn't need to come out and be so aggressive, but he came out and become aggressive because he saw massive space in between lines and he tried to close the gap that was there. Then you could say Zinchenko probably should have kept an eye on Anthony, kept an eye on Anthony, but he couldn't just leave. He couldn't just leave the space that Gabriel had left. So there were so many things that happened that led to the goal. So, but for me, the main thing is the pressing, because when you're trying to press high, you have to play with a high line. When you play with a high line, you need to be compact as well. So that which means the space between your attackers, your midfielders, and your defenders needs to be tight. You can't afford to have players just roaming in between those lines and being able to receive under no pressure. So first of all, you need to have the high line. You need to be compact between lines. You need to be aggressive with your pressing, and you need to be early with your press. You need to be early and get there in time to make sure that the player doesn't play the pass before you get there. But for us, we had the high line, we were pressing, but we were late to the press, and we weren't organized in our shape, and the space between lines wasn't compact, which is why they were able to play those passes between us and get past it, which is why our press failed. So for me, it was an issue with the press overall, not an issue with the individuals, because we've seen the pressing work over the course of the season. So that's one thing there. In terms of the other things that happened in the game, there's positives as well that happened in the game. One of the positives for me was something that I saw people complain about on the timeline during the game, where they felt like Arteta was panicking. For me, that wasn't panicking when he brought on three players. I think he brought on Vieira, Smith Rowe, and Nketiah, if I'm not wrong. And he changed the formation to a 3-4-3/3-5-2, where in midfield he had Vieira, Smith Rowe, and Xhaka at defensive mid, and then up top he had Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus, and then had Martinelli and Saka out wide. So for me, and then obviously he had the back three. So, but for me, that's not panicking, because what he was doing there was overloading the central areas while stretching the pitch with Martinelli and Saka, stretching it with Gabriel Jesus and Nketiah, stretching it vertically, and then stretching it with Martin and Saka wide to create space in the middle, which we had Vieira, Smith Rowe, Xhaka, and then Nketiah dropping in or Jesus dropping in to exploit the central areas. That's smart. That's not panic. We've done that before. We did it when we were chasing the game against Fulham. With, you know what I mean? So it's not a panic. It's just an idea of what we do. Is the way we chase games. So we've seen it in other games, and this is we're gonna see this going forward. I feel like for me that's the way we're gonna chase games, and I feel for me it's a good way to chase the games as well, because you continue to stretch the pitch with wingers who can play 1v1, who can receive long, who can receive short, who can beat their man 1v1, who can make runs in behind, and you have two strikers up top that can attack the space in behind as well. And then you got an overload of three midfielders in there that can use the space centrally to continue to recycle possession, along with the help of the centre backs, who the wide centre backs can also come in and help the midfielders to build up play as well. So it's a good way to chase the game. My only issue with that is that in terms of depth, we have nobody that can play the role that Saka and Martinelli are offering. Obviously, we saw Marquinhos play in the Europa League, so hopefully he can continue with that and continue to perform that way long term. But otherwise, it's only Saka and Martinelli at the moment that can play that role. So my only concern with that is the depth that we have in that wide area. And my other concern is the depth we have in terms of Xhaka. Because for me, although I've said I know that he's playing that role to a certain level, there's a level that he's not able to, that he simply can't reach due to the lack of quality that he doesn't have. There's players that can do certain things that he just can't do. Naturally, he's a player that's not very technical on the ball, or a player that can receive under pressure on turn. That already kills off a lot of things that other centre-mids can do that he can't do. Just like that, there's a lot of things that he literally can't offer us. So for me, we need to get a player who can play that position, who's more natural in that position. So we lack depth in the centre mid. We lack depth in the wide areas. Yeah, and those are the issues for me. Not the bringing in all these players or having to switch to back three and things like that. No, for me that's more of a positive. The other positive I was gonna say is the fact that we're able to impose our game. For me against United, we played really well despite obviously our press messing up and then conceding. We played really well, and we showed that we can impose our game on opposition, and we showed we can impose our game in multiple ways as well. If we have to go long, we can go long to Saka, Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus. If we have to go short, we've got the centre backs, we've got the defensive mids, and the centre mids that can pass between lines, that can play short passes between lines, and use the spaces there to progress the ball into the final third. We've shown that we can beat the opposition's press. So we can go long, we can go short. So, and we were able to do this against United for large spells in the game. It was just unfortunate that we conceded through our mistakes and through the press. But for me, those are the positives that came out of the game. I'm going to talk a lot more about the 4-3-3, the 3-4-3, and the 3-5-2, how we use it when we're chasing games in the next video. Thank you.